Chinaza stood behind the gate of her uncle's house, one arm clutching her bag like it was a life jacket and the other wrapped tightly around her chest. Her eyes were dry, but only because she had run out of tears 3 hours ago. She had been dropped off by her aunt, Ngozi, with a goodbye so brief it felt like she was throwing out trash. The house in Umuoji was quiet. Quiet in a way that made the silence feel personal, like it didn't want her there either. Her cousin, Amarachi, opened the gate halfway and looked at her like she was a mistake. "You came? I thought Mummy said you won't come again," she said, stepping aside like it pained her. Chinaza didn't reply. She walked in with her head low and heart lower. The compound smelled of firewood, dust, and something sour. Maybe Gary water that had overstayed. Her new room was the old storeroom. No bed, no curtain, just a flattened carton and a pile of folded clothes meant to act as a mattress. Her uncle, Ozo Amina, hadn't even looked her way since she arrived. He just muttered something about people who bring themselves into trouble and returned to watching TV. That night, Chinaza lay on the floor, staring at the cracked ceiling. She thought about her late mother. Thought about the way her father disappeared 2 years after the burial, leaving her to be passed around like a borrowed wrapper. She didn't cry. She made a promise to herself instead. She would leave this place. Not physically, there was nowhere to go, but online. She'd seen people build lives on the internet, seen them become somebody from nothing. In school the next day, she wore the same gown she wore to church the week before. It had a faded rose on the chest and the name Sweet Baby printed across. A boy named Obiora laughed so hard when he saw it that he bent over, held his ribs, and coughed. "You sure say N.A. human being you be," he joked. Chinaza smiled. Not because it was funny, but because she refused to let the insult live on her face. She walked past him and headed straight to her classroom. The teacher didn't acknowledge her. No one did. Not until break time. During break, Chinaza brought out a small Nokia phone. It had no SIM card, just Wi-Fi from the school router she had somehow learned to hack into. She went to the toilet, locked herself in a stall, and recorded a video. Her face looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. "Hi. My name is Chinaza. People think I'm nobody. That's fine. Just watch me." She said nothing else. That was the whole video. 12 seconds long. She posted it on a new account on a platform nobody in her school cared about yet, Vibra. She didn't tell anyone. That night, lying on the floor again, Chinaza refreshed her phone every 5 minutes. Nothing. The video had 10 views. She smiled. It was something. The next day, it had 35. Then 70. By the end of the week, over 2,000. The comment that stuck with her came from someone called Dara Sky. It read, "I felt this in my soul. You're not alone." That was the first time she let herself cry since moving in. In school, things remained the same. Amarachi ignored her, sometimes whispered things to her friends and looked in Chinaza's direction. But Chinaza didn't care. Every lunch break, she made another video. Nothing fancy. Just her thoughts, random stories, quiet moments in the toilet. She started talking about survival, about pretending to be okay when you're not. People listened. They sent messages. One girl said Chinaza's videos helped her stop cutting herself. Her uncle noticed nothing. He only grumbled about the NEPA bill. Amarachi noticed. She caught Chinaza once in the toilet and tried to snatch the phone. "You day record nonsense with this your goat face. Internet no spoil finish." Chinaza didn't respond. She went to the market the following Saturday with the little money she made from helping a neighbor sell chin-chin. She bought a second-hand shirt and a new pack of hairbands. She braided her hair into 2 neat cornrows, stood in front of the cracked mirror in the backyard, and took a photo. It went viral. She woke up to over 10,000 new followers. Vibra put her on their Rising Voices tab. Her phone buzzed so much that it restarted on its own. She didn't know what was happening. She just knew it was working. Then came the day her teacher, the same one who never called her name during attendance, walked into class and said, "Is there a Chinaza here? Someone from BBC Niger wants to talk to you." Everyone turned to look. That was the moment everything changed. Amarachi's eyes nearly popped. Obayora's mouth stayed open for 30 seconds. The same teacher who once asked if she belonged to the class now smiled at her like she was a guest of honor. She walked slowly out of the class, heart pounding like it wanted to escape. The call was real. A real BBC journalist had seen her videos. They wanted to feature her in a series about Nigerian teenagers using the internet to rewrite their stories. Chinaza stood outside, phone to her ear, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel forgotten. She felt seen. Chinaza sat under the mango tree behind the school, holding her phone like it was made of glass. She hadn't moved since the call ended. Her fingers were trembling, not out of fear, but from the kind of rush she'd never felt before. For the first time in her life, someone outside this town, outside the tiny square of suffering she had been forced into, had said, "We see you. You matter." The BBC team said they'd come in 2 weeks. They wanted to film her at home, at school, in her element. Chinaza didn't even know what her element was. All she had was her voice and a second-hand phone with a cracked screen. She stood up, dusted her skirt, and walked back into the classroom like she had walked into a new body. She didn't talk. She didn't need to. Everyone stared. Amarachi stared the hardest. After school, she didn't wait for anyone. She walked home fast, too fast, like something was chasing her. Maybe it was her past. Maybe it was the fear of losing this sudden attention. Her uncle was sitting outside with a radio pressed to his ear, chewing on something. He didn't look up. Chinaza went straight to the backyard, took the basin of soaked clothes, and began washing. Her hands were raw. Her eyes were on the ground. But in her head, she was crafting what she would say in her next video. Something real. Something sharp. Something they wouldn't scroll past. That night, after the chores and Amarachi's sneers, she locked herself in the storeroom. A single bulb flickered above her. She sat in front of the cracked mirror again and pressed record. "I used to think I didn't matter," she said. "They treated me like a shadow. Like something to step over. But I'm not going anywhere. You see me now? Good. Because I've always been here." She posted it, tucked the phone under her pillow, and slept with a small smile on her face. By morning, her smile had grown into something wild. Over 50,000 views. Her follower count had doubled. The messages were pouring in like rain. One said, "You gave me hope this morning. I watched your video instead of crying." Another said, "You're doing something special. Don't stop." At school, Obayora tried to sit beside her. Tried to start a conversation. "That your video, N. I even reposted it. I day feel you now." She looked at him, held his gaze, then turned away. The school principal sent for her. The same man who once told her to stop wearing disgraceful shoes. Now he was shaking her hand like she was a visiting governor. "You're making this school proud," he said. "We will support your journey." She nodded. It felt fake. But it also felt good. Amarachi started acting like she wanted to be best friends. She brought Chinaza snacks during break. Even offered to help her do assignments. "Naza, I was thinking, we can do a video together. I know how to do voiceover and things." Chinaza smiled lightly. "Thanks. But this one is personal." That evening, when the sun dipped behind the zinc roofs and the smell of akara filled the street, Chinaza walked to Mama Ejike's shop and asked to use her mirror. Mama Ejike was one of the few people who didn't talk much but always looked at Chinaza kindly. She said, "Ah, you don become celeb now, oh. Your aunt go soon frame your picture for parlor." Chinaza laughed. Not the kind that hides pain. A real one. She stood in front of the mirror, filmed a video of herself braiding her hair, no filter, no edits. "This is me. Real face. Real life. Nothing sweet here except the fact that I didn't let them kill my light. The video blew up again. By the end of the week, her page had over 100,000 followers. The comments weren't just from Nigerians anymore. People from Ghana, South Africa, and even London were sharing her story. Someone tagged her and said, "This girl is the future. Watch her closely." The BBC team arrived on a Wednesday. 2 women and a tall man with camera gear. They were kind, not pushy. They asked her about her life, her dreams, her videos. She didn't cry during the interview. She wanted to. But she didn't. They followed her to school, asked the teachers some questions. Obiora kept grinning like he had always supported her. Amarachi wore lip gloss and hovered around, hoping to be caught on camera. Later that day, the team followed her home. Her uncle was suspicious. "Who be these people? Camera for wetting? Is it government something?" She explained. He scratched his head, then grumbled, "Just don't go and say something that will bring disgrace." Amarachi posed in the background. Chinaza ignored her. She stood in front of the gate, the same one she walked through with nothing but a small bag and a bigger pain. She looked into the camera and said, "I walked in here invisible. But I'm leaving known." The video aired a week later. Everything exploded. Her name was everywhere. Blogs, radio, social media. One headline read, "The girl who rose from a storeroom." She got a call from a brand. They wanted her to model their clothes and be the face of their campaign. They said they were looking for authenticity, and she was it. More offers came. An NGO asked her to speak to girls in rural schools. A tech startup offered to give her a better phone and support her content creation. She still didn't have a bank account. She didn't even know how to open one. The same uncle who wouldn't look at her now said things like, "We always knew you were special." He started giving her meat in her food. Amarachi tried harder, begged to be her assistant. But Chinaza didn't forget. She still washed her clothes by hand. Still made videos in low light. Still talked to her followers like they were her only family. Because in a way, they were. Then came the night that made everything real. She posted a video saying, "If you ever felt invisible, this is for you. You're not alone. I see you, just like I hoped someone would see me." The president's official account reposted it. She gained 200,000 new followers overnight. The world didn't just see her. They were listening. The rain came without warning. It pounded the zinc roof above Chinaza's head like 1,000 small fists. She sat cross-legged in the storeroom, her new phone glowing in her palm. The light cast soft shadows on the peeling walls. Outside, thunder grumbled like an old man with secrets. But inside her, something brighter was stirring. She had just hit 500,000 followers. 500,000 people. It didn't feel real. Just a few months ago, nobody knew her name. Now strangers were typing things like, "Chinaza changed my life, and if she can rise, maybe I can too." She didn't understand it fully, but she felt it deeply. She opened her messages. Hundreds waiting. Some from fans. Some from brands. Some from girls who had stories like hers. One caught her eye. A girl named Tolulope had written, "I was going to take my life last week. Then I found your page. I saw your eyes. I saw pain, but I also saw fight. I'm still here because of you." Chinaza blinked slowly. She read the message again, then again. Her heart clenched in that strange way it always did when someone saw her not as a trend, but as a mirror. She replied simply, "You're not alone. I see you. Stay." As the rain softened to a drizzle, she stood up, stretched her arms, and walked barefoot to the corridor. The floor was cold. The air smelled of wet clothes and smoky aguzi. She watched the raindrops hit the red earth in tiny splashes. Inside the parlor, her uncle was watching a football match. Amarachi sat next to him, scrolling through her phone. Neither of them spoke to her. Not really. They didn't need to. She had outgrown the need for their approval. But that didn't stop them from changing. The week before, her uncle had called her into the parlor and handed her a brown envelope. From one man like that, he say make he support your dreams. NA scholarship. He talk say him see you for online. Chinaza had opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a letter of full sponsorship for school and a check with more zeros than she'd ever seen. Her knees nearly gave out. The same uncle who once asked her not to embarrass the family now introduced her to visitors with pride. This is Chinaza, my niece, the one that's famous online. BBC, she day there. The president Sef repost her. Amarachi, on the other hand, kept changing her face depending on who was around. When visitors came, she laughed loudly and called Chinaza our celeb. But when they were alone, her silence cut sharper than a knife. One night, as Chinaza filmed a short video about overcoming self-doubt, Amarachi barged into the storeroom. You think you're better than us now, ABI, she said, standing at the door like a storm. Chinaza paused the recording. She didn't look up. Why are you angry? Because I've lived here my whole life. I went to that same school. I wore my cousin's shoes. But nobody looked at me twice. You came here from nowhere and now people think you're some kind of queen. Chinaza stood slowly, walked to the doorway, and looked Amarachi in the eye. I didn't ask to be noticed. I just didn't want to disappear. For a second, Amarachi looked like she might cry. But pride held her face together. She walked away without another word. The next day, Chinaza posted a video. Not the kind with clever words or smooth edits. Just her sitting on the edge of a bench, hair wrapped in a scarf, looking straight at the camera. There are people who will hate you just because you didn't stay down. Don't explain yourself. Don't beg to shrink. Shine anyway. It went viral again. People shared it with captions like "This girl is not just a creator. She's a movement." She got invited to speak at a digital summit in Abuja. A real stage. Real lights. Real microphones. Her name was printed on the banner next to tech giants and media influencers. She had never been on a plane before. She wore a plain white dress and sneakers her followers had sent her. As the plane lifted into the sky, she stared out the window, mouth slightly open, breath caught in her throat. When she landed, the airport felt like another world. She kept looking around, half expecting someone to say she didn't belong there. But no one did. A driver held a card with her name printed in bold letters, Chinaza Okafor. In the hotel room, she sat on the bed for almost an hour, just staring at the soft pillows and glass bathroom. This was a life she had only seen in movies. Now it was hers. Not through luck, not through lies, but through truth. Raw, aching truth. The event was packed. She stood backstage, hands cold, knees weak. Then they called her name. The room erupted in applause. She stepped onto the stage. Lights blinded her for a second, but she took a deep breath and walked to the mic. My name is Chinaza Okafor. A few months ago, I was just a girl sleeping on a carton in a storeroom. Now, I speak to millions. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm honest. Because I didn't wait for permission to be heard. The crowd was silent. Listening. Feeling. Then they stood. One after another. A standing ovation. That night, she got a message from someone unexpected. The president's media team. They wanted to meet her. Her hands shook again. Not from fear this time. From awe. She was being seen not as a trend, not as a fluke, but as a voice that mattered. When she returned to Umuoji, the whole compound gathered. Children peeped through the gate. Women clapped. Her uncle wore a fresh wrapper. Amarachi tried to smile. But Chinaza didn't care for the performance. She just went straight to her storeroom, stood in the doorway, and took a picture. Then she posted it with a caption that read, "This is where I started. I'll never forget." The comments poured in. So did tears. From her. From strangers. From girls in villages who thought no one would ever listen to them. But they were listening now. And Chinaza wasn't done. Not even close. Ask ChatGPT. The first knock came just after sunrise. Chinaza was still lying on the thin mattress in her storeroom, half asleep, head pressed against her folded wrapper. The knock wasn't loud, but it was steady, like someone sure of why they came. She rubbed her eyes and opened the door. It was Mama Ijike, holding a small nylon bag. "I made some okra," she said. "You need strength. You've been carrying this whole town on your back without rest." Chinaza smiled gently. "Thank you, Ma." Mima Ijike nodded, then glanced into the room. "You're still sleeping here?" "I'm used to it," Chinaza said. Mima Ijike breathed, the way older women do when they want to say more but choose silence instead. After she left, Chinaza sat back on the mattress, peeled open the bag, and ate quietly. The storeroom was still dark, except for the slit of light coming through the broken window pane. Her phone buzzed beside her. Another notification. Another request. Another door she hadn't even knocked on, swinging wide open. She was being invited to New York. A global youth media conference. Her story had crossed oceans. People were quoting her lines in podcasts, teachers were showing her videos in classrooms. They said she represented hope, the kind that wasn't filtered or forced. Just real. But Chinaza wasn't smiling. Not today. Because last night, her aunt had looked her in the eye and said, "Don't forget where you come from. Don't let all this fame turn you into someone you're not." That was the thing, though. Chinaza hadn't changed. The world had. They had finally started listening. But home still struggled to celebrate her without swallowing her. Later that afternoon, she went to the school again. She wanted to surprise her literature teacher, Mr. Nana. He was one of the few people who had never looked down on her, even when her sandals were patched with superglue. She walked into the staff room. Some teachers stared, whispered. One tried to stand and shake her hand like she was royalty. But Mr. Nana just smiled. "I knew you'd do something big. You always wrote like your pen had a bone to pick with the world." Chinaza laughed softly. "You were the first person to say my words had power. I didn't forget. Now the world knows," he said. "But don't forget something else, power listens to truth, not noise. Stay true." She nodded. The next week flew by in a blur. She got her passport, thanks to a foundation that sponsored the process. Her flight ticket was booked. She was going to speak alongside people she used to only watch on her phone screen, people with clean English, sharp suits, voices trained to command attention. But Chinaza didn't want to become them. She wanted to stay her. One evening before her trip, she walked to the town square. There was no special reason, she just wanted to breathe. She saw a group of girls seated under the shade of a small kiosk, talking in low voices. One of them saw her and froze. Then whispered something. The others turned. Quiet. Wide-eyed. Chinaza walked past, smiling politely. But one of them, small, dark-skinned, hair packed in two tiny puffs, ran up to her. "My name is Ijeoma," the girl said, breathless. "Please don't stop what you're doing. Please. I watch your videos every day. You make me feel like I matter." Chinaza knelt to her level. Looked her right in the eye. "You do matter. Even if nobody claps for you yet." The girl nodded, eyes glistening. Chinaza went home that evening and posted a video, one of the rawest she'd ever made. No makeup. No background music. Just her, sitting cross-legged on the storeroom floor. "I'm not famous because I'm better," she said. "I just stopped hiding. That's all. Whatever you're running from, face it. Whatever makes you small, fight it. And never forget, being seen doesn't make you valuable. You were already valuable before the spotlight came." It went everywhere. The caption read, "For Ijeoma. For every girl who thinks she's too quiet to be heard." That night, her video hit 1 million views. When she boarded the flight to New York, her uncle carried her bag like it was the crown of the village. Amarachi stood in the background, arms folded, trying not to look impressed. At the airport, people came up to her, took selfies. One woman cried. On the plane, Chinaza stared at the sky through the tiny window and whispered, "God, I beg, let me not forget where I started." New York was loud. Not just with sound, but with pace, with ambition, with pride. The air was colder than home. The streets wider. But Chinaza didn't shrink. She wore her simple gown, tied her scarf the way her mother used to, and stepped onto the stage with quiet power. The hall went silent. And she began. "My name is Chinaza Okafor. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not an expert. I'm just a girl from Umuoji who refused to keep quiet. My story started in a storeroom, but my voice refused to stay there." They listened. They leaned in. Not because she used big grammar, but because she made them feel. After her speech, people lined up to hug her. One man said, "You speak like a storm wearing slippers." She laughed. She liked that. But what she liked more was the email she got later that night. A media company wanted to produce a documentary about her life. They wanted to film in Umuoji. She agreed. But on one condition. That they also film Ijeoma. And Mama Ijike. And Mr. Nana. She wasn't just going to rise. She was going to lift others with her. Because this story, it wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every girl who had ever whispered to herself in the dark, hoping someone, somewhere, would hear. When Chinaza stepped off the plane back in Nigeria, the air didn't feel the same. It wasn't the smell of roasted maize or the taxi drivers shouting for passengers, it was something inside her. A quiet shift. She had left as a girl who was just beginning to be seen. She was returning as a voice the world had agreed to listen to. But in Umuoji, things moved at their own pace. She arrived at the compound late in the evening. The sky was soft and grey, like it hadn't fully decided whether to rain or not. The gateman, Emmanuel, opened the gate with wide eyes. He didn't speak. Just stared like she'd come down from television into real life. Her uncle stood at the doorway. He had dressed like he was going to a meeting, ironed shirt, slippers polished. Amarachi sat by the side, scrolling through her phone, pretending not to care, but the screen's brightness couldn't hide the way her eyes darted up every few seconds. Chinaza smiled and carried her own bag inside. She went straight to her storeroom. Same mattress. Same faint stain on the wall. Same air that carried the smell of books, fabric, and a little bit of dust. She sat down and breathed in. Not because she missed the discomfort, but because she needed to remember the hunger. The next morning, she woke up early. Her team had sent the documentary crew already, they were waiting at the community hall. The plan was simple: show the world where it all began. Not the filtered version. The truth. When she arrived, the camera crew was setting up. There were cables everywhere, tripods standing tall, and a producer speaking fast into a headset. But what made Chinaza stop was the small group of young girls sitting near the back. Uniforms too big for them. Shoes worn thin. Notebooks in hand. They looked like she used to. She asked the producer, "Who are they?" "They came early," he said. "Said they wanted to see you." She walked over to them. There were 6 in total. The smallest one, named Kamsi, was hugging her notebook like it was her last slice of hope. Chinaza sat down beside her. "You like to write?" she asked. Kamsi nodded. "But my papa say writers don't eat food." Chinaza laughed gently. "Then tell your papa to watch me eat after this shoot." Kamsi smiled for the first time. The cameras rolled. They followed Chinaza through the school corridors. She showed them the corner where she used to cry between classes. The window she used to stare out from, imagining a bigger world. She pointed to the exact place where she had decided, on a random Wednesday, that she would no longer be invisible. When the crew asked her to summarize her journey, she said only one thing. "I wasn't waiting to be discovered. I just refused to stay hidden." That clip alone went viral before the full documentary even aired. The following week, something unexpected happened. A letter came. Not an email. Not a DM. An actual letter, folded neatly, delivered by hand. It was from Amarachi. Not loud, not sarcastic, not coated in fake smiles. Just quiet honesty. She wrote, "I never told you, but I used to write too. I stopped because people laughed when I said I wanted to be on radio. They said my voice was too soft. I guess I became one of them, laughing before anyone could laugh at me. But watching you, it did something. I just wanted you to know." Chinaza held the letter like it might vanish. That night, she called Amarachi into the storeroom. They didn't talk much. Just sat side by side, their legs brushing, the silence not heavy this time. Then Chinaza said, "Record something." Amarachi blinked. Now, Chinaza said. She handed her the phone, opened the voice recorder, and sat back. Amarachi stared at the screen for a long second. Then she spoke. Softly. But steadily. "This is Amarachi. And I've always wanted to be heard." That was the beginning. In the next few days, Chinaza helped her edit the audio. Helped her post it. Helped her set up a small podcast, one for girls who were told their voices were too quiet. They called it Soft Thunder. It blew up within a week. Amarachi's followers started growing. People from other towns began reaching out. And for the first time since Chinaza's rise began, Amarachi didn't feel left behind. She felt lit up. The documentary aired 2 weeks later. It broke records. People cried watching it. People from across the world, New Zealand, Brazil, South Africa, messaged Chinaza, saying they had never felt more seen. People quoted her, painted murals of her, started fundraisers for girls in Nigeria just like her. And the president, yes, the actual president, called her directly. Not a repost this time. A real call. He invited her to a private dinner, said the country needed voices like hers in national conversations. Said she represented a new kind of leadership, the one that wasn't born in power, but in pain. She agreed to meet him. But she had one more stop first. She went back to her mother's grave. Alone. No cameras. No fans. No phone. She knelt on the earth, brushed away the dry leaves, and said softly, "They know my name now, Mama. But I still remember yours." Tears came, but she didn't wipe them. She let them fall. Let the earth receive them. When she stood up, she didn't feel heavy anymore. She felt sure. She returned to Umuoji with a plan. She called a meeting. Not with politicians. Not with businessmen. With girls. 50 of them. She brought them to the community hall, gave each one a notebook, and told them the truth. "I don't have all the answers," she said. "But I have proof that it's possible. And if it's possible for me, it can be possible for you. Not all of you will write. Some of you will paint. Or speak. Or teach. Or lead. Just don't wait for permission. Start." That night, they stayed late. Some wrote poems. Some shared their fears. Some just cried. But they all stayed. Because something was happening. Not on social media. Not on stages. But right here. A quiet revolution. And at the center of it all was Chinaza. Still standing. Still speaking. Still remembering exactly where she came from. And exactly where she was going. The morning started with pounding on the gate. Not the kind that comes with urgency. The kind that comes with too much pride. Chinaza didn't need to check, only one person knocked like that. It was Chief Agada. A man with too many titles and not enough humility. One of those elders who shook hands with both disdain and calculation. He had never looked her in the eye growing up. Not once. But now, her name was the loudest in the country. Even his compound boy was following her online. She opened the gate herself. He was standing there, white kaftan too white, chewing stick moving between his teeth. "My daughter," he said, as if he had ever once acknowledged her existence. "You're doing well, very well. That speech of yours, eh? Even my wife cried. And she doesn't cry easily. She raised one brow. He cleared his throat. Listen, there's a summit in Abuja next week. I'll be speaking there. I think you should come. I'll introduce you to some people. Real people. Not all these small followers online. Chinaza smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I appreciate the offer, sir. But I don't think I'm the one who needs the introduction. He blinked, confused. She added, if they're real people, they already know who I am. And with that, she shut the gate. That evening, she went back to the community hall. Not for a meeting this time. For rehearsal. She was working with the girls on a new project, a short play, written entirely by them. Some would act, some would narrate, some would dance. It wasn't just a performance. It was a mirror. For the town. For the country. For anyone who ever thought girls were meant to wait for permission. Kamsi had written one of the strongest scenes. She stood in front of the group, shy at first, reading her lines like they were secrets. But as the words flowed, her back straightened. Her voice deepened. She wasn't just reading anymore. She was arriving. Chinaza sat in the corner, silent, watching. Something inside her stirred. Not pride. Something deeper. Like witnessing a seed push through soil. After rehearsal, the girls circled around her. Not because they wanted pictures. But because they had questions. Did you ever feel like giving up? One asked. Every day, she said. What made you keep going? I couldn't afford to stop. My silence wouldn't feed me. And it definitely wouldn't save me. The next week brought more change. A local school reached out, asking her to build a creative center, writing, speaking, arts, everything that had been ignored for too long. She said yes. On one condition. No adults controlling it, she said. Let the students run it. I'll train the first batch, then let it grow. They agreed. Within days, paint buckets arrived. Brushes. Desks. Books. She named it the loud room. Because some voices were never meant to whisper. Every day after that, new things kept happening. An offer to write a memoir. A call from a film studio to adapt her story. Another youth award, this time from Ghana. But none of it changed how she moved in Umuoji. She still walked to the market with slippers. Still greeted the elders with 2 hands. Still fetched water with the younger girls during dry days. Because elevation was not an excuse for disconnection. It was proof that roots could hold up a tree, even when the branches touched the sky. One afternoon, Amarachi ran into her room with a grin wide enough to split her face. They played my voice clip on the radio, she said, breathless. The Lagos station. People were calling in to ask for the full episode. Chinaza pulled her into a hug. I told you, she said. Your voice was never too soft. They were just too loud to hear it before. Amarachi stepped back, eyes shining. You think I can host my own show? You already are. Later that night, the power cut out. Total darkness. Chinaza stepped outside. The sky was full. Moon gentle. Crickets singing like they'd been hired. She sat on the ground, back against the storeroom wall. And just listened. For the first time in a while, she wasn't thinking about followers or interviews or headlines. She was thinking about peace. About how loud her heart used to be when everything else was quiet. About how she used to whisper poems into her pillow, scared that even her own voice would betray her. Now her voice wasn't just loud. It was leading. That night, her inbox filled again. Messages from girls in Maiduguri, in Owari, in Makurdi. Messages from boys, too. Saying, I didn't know someone like me could matter. She read every single one. Didn't reply with auto messages. She typed, slowly, carefully, as if each word was a hand on someone's shoulder. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You just need to be clear. The play was scheduled for the following month. Rehearsals became full evenings. Parents started showing up to watch. The local chief asked for tickets. Chinaza didn't sell any. She said, "This story doesn't cost money. It costs attention." On the night of the play, the hall overflowed. Some stood outside, peering through the windows. The girls performed like they were born for it. They told the story of a girl called a nobody, a girl laughed at, ignored, forgotten. Then they showed her rising, not magically, not because of luck, but because she kept showing up. By the final scene, people were crying. Not just tears. Tears with memory. Tears with recognition. Chinaza stepped on stage after the bow. She didn't say much. Just this. "You watched our story. Now go write yours." And the whole hall stood. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a person can do is remind others of their own power. She walked home that night, tired but full. No cameras. No interviews. Just the quiet company of legacy. Because she hadn't just gained followers. She had created leaders. And Umuoji would never be the same. The sky cracked open that morning, not with rain, but with clarity. Everything felt sharper. The smell of soaked earth after last night's light drizzle. The laughter of schoolchildren walking by the gate. Even the sound of Amarachi boiling water in the kitchen carried more weight than usual. It was the final day of the program, the last performance of The Loud Room. News outlets had shown up from Enugu, Lagos, even one from Nairobi. Big names in suits stood shoulder to shoulder with schoolgirls in wrinkled uniforms. And Chinaza, the girl they once whispered about, was the one they'd all come to see again. But she wasn't in a hurry. She took her time that morning. Sat outside, wrapping her scarf slowly, the way her mother used to. She wasn't dressing to impress anyone. She had already said all the things that needed to be said. Now, she wanted to listen. There was a knock at the door. Not hurried. Not forceful. She opened it to find her father standing there. His hands were empty. No gifts. No excuses. He had aged. Not in the face, but in the posture. The shoulders were smaller now, the ego softened. "I heard the whole country is watching you," he said. Chinaza stepped aside. Let him in. They Saturday. Awkwardly at first. The silence between them stretched, but didn't break. He cleared his throat. "I didn't know how to father a child like you. You asked questions I didn't have answers for. Wanted things I didn't understand." She didn't interrupt. "I was ashamed," he continued. "Not of you. Of myself. Because you were everything I pretended I could never be." It landed differently than she expected. Not like fire. Like water. Slow. Heavy. Cleansing. She nodded once. "I didn't need a perfect father. I just needed one who showed up." He looked at her, tears gathering like he didn't know men were allowed to cry. "I'm here now." She didn't reach for his hand. But she didn't pull away either. Later, at the hall, the air buzzed. More than before. Not just curiosity now, expectation. People leaned forward. Journalists tested their mics. A minister sat beside a small girl who held a pencil like a microphone, whispering, "One day, I'll be the one asking questions." Backstage, Chinaza helped Kamsi tie her wrapper. "You ready?" she asked. Kamsi's eyes were steady. "I was born ready. I just didn't know it until you showed up." The play began. This time, it wasn't just performance. It was declaration. Each line, each step, each turn of phrase had been polished with sweat and belief. The story was no longer just Chinaza's, it had grown into a movement. A loud, colorful, unshakable movement. In one scene, Amarachi walked across the stage with a fake mic in her hand, reenacting her podcast journey. Her voice carried with a calm power, like she had always known it belonged on air. In another scene, Kamsi acted out the younger version of Chinaza alone in her storeroom, scribbling stories no one would read. Except this time, the audience watched. And they listened. When it ended, the silence was so thick, no one clapped at first. Then came one hand. Then another. Then a rising wave. People didn't just clap. They stood. They cried. They hugged strangers. Because the truth was so bare, so human, that even those who came with cameras forgot to press record. Afterwards, a group of students from a nearby village approached Chinaza. The oldest was no more than 17. "Can you bring the loud room to our place?" they asked. "We have stories too." Chinaza nodded. "You don't need me to bring it. You can build it." They looked at each other. Nervous. She added, "Start with a bench. Then bring your words." "That's enough." More emails rolled in. More schools reached out. Even a publisher offered to take the girls' script international. But the biggest surprise came the next week. Her inbox lit up with a single, quiet message. From an anonymous user. No picture. No grand greeting. Just this. "I watched your story. I was going to end mine last week. But now I've decided to write a new chapter instead. Thank you for reminding me that I matter." Chinaza didn't know who they were. But she saved the message. Printed it. Folded it into her notebook. Because in a world obsessed with numbers, it was easy to forget what one life meant. And she refused to forget. As weeks turned into months, the loud room became more than a place, it became a ripple. Villages started hosting open MIC nights. Schools set up recording booths. Young girls began journaling their dreams, not hiding them. And Chinaza? She stayed rooted. She declined 2 speaking engagements overseas. Not because she wasn't grateful, but because Kamsi had a new play in 2 weeks, and she promised she wouldn't miss it. She walked through the village as she always did. People still greeted her, but now with something different. Not awe, not envy, but recognition. They had finally seen her. Not because she screamed, but because she refused to disappear. On the anniversary of her first viral post, she visited her mother's grave again. This time, she brought Amarachi and Kamsi. They stood quietly for a while. Then Kamsi asked, what would she have said if she was here? Chinaza didn't pause. She would have said, "I always knew." Kamsi smiled. Amarachi reached for Chinaza's hand. They stood like that for a while. No cameras. No applause. Just 3 women in a quiet moment that felt louder than any stage. And somewhere deep inside her, Chinaza knew. She had started as a girl nobody noticed. Now she was the mirror in which others saw their worth. And that would never fade.